So what I'd like to talk to you about is, I mean, clearly AI is advancing rapidly, right? And it's become more than just a technology issue, it's become a risk management issue. Right? And so what does that mean from an educational perspective? I mean, like how can we respond? How should we respond? And so what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about a program that we've developed and offered out there into the marketplace that seeks to try to address this issue and kind of what we saw and what we're seeing in terms of needs and market response. So what do I mean that AI is a risk management issue? Well, clearly it's transforming industries. It's certainly having a transformative impact on the financial services industry. I mean, it's becoming increasingly embedded in not just processes, but decision-making processes across a wide range of areas. And so this brings, clearly a lot of benefits, right? I mean, you can process huge amounts of data. You can do more sophisticated forecasting. You can maybe analyze data that, previously, might have been difficult to analyze, allowing you to expand credit, et cetera, right? You can get a lot of efficiencies, cost savings, and so forth. But, the old Wall Street, maxim, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, probably that, holds true here as well. AI can introduce some risk, right, through its use into an organization. A lot of that has been talked about here today. I mean, there's transparency, bias, issues around data governance, model governance, regulatory compliance, and there's a host of risks that it may introduce into an organization, into a process. And so you have these organizations, firms around the world that have an existing workforce and maybe grappling with, well, what do we do, right? I mean, how do we educate our workforce to act effectively in this new world, in this rapidly evolving world? This quote that I have here is from the World Economic Forum. It speaks to some of the challenges being faced by the kind of upper level within an organization that, who may have a lot of responsibility, but may not necessarily have all of the requisite knowledge and tools to kind of, think through some of these issues. There are many studies out there, now talking about, workforce competency as it relates to AI. So what do we at my organization see specifically? Well, we conduct surveys, among other things. We conduct every 3 years, we do what we call global practice analysis, where we survey the risk management profession globally, essentially asking, what is it that you do and what is it that you need to know in order to do it effectively? And we also ask them, what more would you like to know? Like, what types of continuing education do you feel you will need? You either need now or you see yourself needing in the next couple of years. And so from our last practice analysis, which was 2024, well, the results are on the left-hand side chart. AI, machine learning was, clearly number one. The next two were, you might consider them nearbys, right? Like data science and models and model risk. So this is thousands of risk managers all around the world, basically saying that they feel that they have this need for further learning in this space. And so when we ask, well, okay, could you be a little bit more specific? On the right list some of the major knowledge areas which they specified, and you can see governance frameworks, validation of models, etc. I know a lot was spoken about earlier today about governance and governance framework that certainly seems to have come out in our survey work. But you also have other things. You have the more sort of nuts and bolts, machine learning and applications, applications of how do I apply these tools in risk management. You have ethics, what to do with third parties, so there's a lot, our risk management community is saying, I want to know things, and there's a wide range of them. All right, so that may sort of suggest or argue that there's a need for a bit of a new approach to how we address this aspect of professional education, where we would where there's a need for an integrated approach that covers the technical aspects. It also covers some ethics and governance frameworks. It has applications so that people see that it's relevant to what they do or what they might do, or what's going on in their firm under them that they're responsible for, and that it needs to be risk infused, right? Risk aware. We had one of our sayings at GARP for a number of years was everyone is a risk manager. And so, we kind of have a view, a philosophy of embedding a sort of a risk perspective in a lot of what we do. And so that seems to be what might be needed from what we're hearing from our professionals. So GARP, the Global Association of Risk Professionals, for those, some of you may know us, some of you may not. So we are a not-for-profit professional association. We have a mission to advance risk management through education, research, and promotion of best practices. We've been around since last century, late last century. Our educational efforts, we have many. We have webinars, we have symposiums, but our major thrust is professional certification and certificates. The FRM is our flagship program, the Financial Risk Management Program. It's been around for over a quarter of a century. There are now currently 100,000 certified FRMs all around the world. We have a board of trustees, very, diverse group of, high-ranking risk managers. We are nonpartisan and try to do things with a mission-oriented approach. So we see this, right? We see this from our risk profession, and we say, well, what role do we have to play, right? Is there something that we could be doing, right? Is there some role that we can play in addressing this knowledge gap? So what did we do? What we did is we dug deep. We talked to a lot of people. We went on a fairly extensive listening tour. We formed focus groups to really kind of find out what it is that was needed that we could offer, right? There's a lot of educational programs out there, right? There's a lot of very good educational programs out there. So, what is it that we could do that might be relevant, that might be useful? And so what really came out of that, and we also formed an advisory committee, practitioners and academics, again, a wide swath, geographies and specialties. We do rely a lot on, working with professionals as well as academics to develop our work. But the big things that came out of it is that, well, one, we need to make sure that our flagship program has, coverage of artificial intelligence, right? So, the FRM, our flagship program, has to, reflect some aspect of, knowledge of artificial intelligence. However, that may not be enough, right? That there's a need for something specific, right? Something that deals with artificial intelligence and risk, not just because there are folks who they're not going to do the FRM. It's too big. It may not be absolutely necessary for them, but they do have a need for this knowledge. Maybe they're more senior in their career, maybe they're not deep dive risk managers, whatever it happens to be, there's a need for a specific offering. So we set about building one, and it's the RAI, the Risk and Artificial Intelligence Program. And so just we squabble over a lot of things. One of them was just the title, right? It's not risk of artificial intelligence, it's risk and artificial intelligence, right? Because artificial intelligence, I mean, as we've all heard today, and I'm sure know from other places as well, it's very useful, right? I mean, it plays can play a very useful role in risk management, but it can also bring these risks. So there's kind of two sides to it. The basic structure, I won't bore you with all the details, but I will just talk a little bit about the basic structure. It begins with some of the history and basic concepts of artificial intelligence, really because as we know, it didn't, AI didn't just arrive with ChatGPT, but you can't just assume that everyone, feels that way, right? And so, positioning it in time, right? Alan Turing, the Dartmouth Summer, Minsky, or, all that stuff can have some use, right? I mean, it puts it into some perspective, right? How it evolved, how it developed. There are concepts that are, can be very important, search, reinforcement learning, neural networks, that you could explain or seek to explain through examples other than, strictly artificial intelligence. So we wanted to get a little bit of that up and running to get people comfortable with some of this. And then there's the AI tools and techniques, which is a fairly decent portion of the program that goes through a lot of the tools and techniques, and that includes data and data cleaning and data, the importance of dealing with your data. But then it goes through, from k-means, neural nets, reinforcement learning, generative AI, and tries to do it at a level that is not too technical, but doesn't pretend that there isn't some technical aspect to it. But we wanted to make it accessible. And then it goes into risks and risk factors. So now there, you kind of know some of the history, some of the concepts, some of the tools and techniques. Well, okay, you should probably be thinking about some of these things. And then you get into like the bias, explainability, things of that nature, over reliance on the model output, data risk, privacy issues, a whole host of, even touching on some of the, societal risks and things of that nature to kind of get people to start to think, okay, well, there are these risks that I need to think about. Now what, right? So responsible and ethical AI, that's where we start to introduce some of the ethical frameworks and responsible AI frameworks that we hope that people would find some value in. And again, we tried to build it up from as basic a level as we could. I mean, we actually worked with some of the folks at Oxford who run programs in philosophy and computer science, as well as ethical AI, kind of building up some of the philosophical underpinnings of practical ethics, and then moving into practical ethics, and then even drawing on medical ethics, which is a field that has a lot to offer. I mean, medicine has been dealing with ethical issues on technical matters for quite a long time, longer than possibly computer science has. So we lay out some of the responsible and ethical AI frameworks because we feel it's important. We know that not every answer to what should I do now is going to be answered, right? So we want to give people frameworks in which they and their organization can be thinking about these things. Then we go into data and AI model governance. We know that there there are frameworks out there, the EU AI Act, the NIST, what was SR 11.7. There are approaches to governance which are out there, which can be adapted or have been adapted to AI issues. So we present those, and we have a host of case studies, practitioner perspectives in order to kind of make it come alive. There's no coding required in this course. That was also kind of a squabbled over issue. But we did not, we wanted to see if we could deliver the important concepts, the important ideas, without blocking out people who maybe would not feel that comfortable if they were confronted with having to code. It's, it's an issue one could debate, but that's the approach. So, it's offered to individuals. I mean, we do work with organizations, but it's really designed as a self-study program. We have an online platform. We have a book. Everything, we try to make everything as so that the person could take it and go to the library or sit in their living room and they can learn it on their own, which is a bit of a challenge, particularly with some of the more technical areas. But give them end of chapter questions and all sorts of other stuff, and then we assess them. Right? We have an assessment. It's not just a certificate of completion. There is a what we would like to consider a fair but rigorous assessment. And so that's what we developed in response to what we saw was the demand. So you put it out there into the market, to the big world, and you try to see what the response is. So we brought this out in late summer of 2024, and we've run it 4 cycles. And so far, I would say the response has been quite good. We've had 3,500 individuals participate to date across over 100 countries, hundreds of companies. India seems to be very interested in this topic. We get a lot of candidates from India, United States, UK, etc. Our organization does do a lot in the financial services space. It's not surprising that a lot of these folks are coming from financial services. We tried to design the program so it wasn't just specific to financial services, but it's clearly a very, very relevant topic in that space. And those are the top 10 companies. So, so far, it seems to have been well received. So far this year, we're up 67% from the same time last year. So, so it does seem to be hitting a nerve of sorts. But so who are we reaching, right? Who is interested in this? Are we actually doing anything to deal with this knowledge gap or need that we felt was out there? So we survey the folks who do the program. The chart on the left is years of experience, overall years of experience in their AI-related years of AI-related experience. And so, it's clear that, well, it's definitely skewed towards the more seniors, right? There's a lot with 10 plus years of experience. The fact that they don't have that much AI related experience, I mean, might not be that surprising, right? Because it's relatively new, right? So I would say, however, if we looked at the same type of distribution for our flagship program for the FRM, you would see that you get a lot more young people. It would actually be skewed, and it would almost, not exactly, but almost be flipped over. We get a lot more people coming into their careers, building their careers, whereas this is definitely the more seniors. But also that we ask them, so are you involved in AI projects, or are they coming down the pike? And so over half said they are currently involved, and another 30% it's coming. I don't know about the other 15%. maybe they just haven't gotten the email yet. But so clearly, like these are the folks, or it seems these are the folks who have this responsibility, but don't feel that they have the experience or the knowledge, or at least that's what this would suggest. You get a lot of about half are senior manager above, almost 10% are C-suite or board level. They tend to be pretty well educated. 80% have a master's or above. That's not unusual for our programs. We see that in pretty much all of our programs, but not that many have an AI or data science degree, right? Again, not surprising because they haven't been around for that long, right? Or they're, but again, it kind of points out that these are folks, they're senior, they have these responsibilities, they're involved in these AI projects, so they feel they're going to be. They're educated, but maybe not in these particular areas. And so, and when we ask them about the primary motivation, like, why are you doing this? For us, I'd say it's overwhelmingly 57% is, they want to bolster their knowledge. Right? That may not seem that surprising, I don't know. But again, if we looked at some of our other programs, what you'd see is jobs, right? Like you would see career advancement, competitiveness. That's what, but that's not what we're seeing here. We're saying that these are folks who want to skill up, right? They want to fill that gap that they feel that they have. I think in conclusion, what we see at GARP is that the risk management profession and these organizations are being challenged, right? There's, AI is kind of sweeping in, and risk managers, and others in the, senior roles have to be able to manage, have to be able to think through, how to effectively and safely use these tools within their organizations. But maybe there's a gap, right? Maybe there's a training gap, maybe there's a knowledge gap, maybe there's an education gap. And it needs an approach that kind of synthesizes the technical, the ethical, the responsible, the practical, in a risk-aware approach. And so, our response so far, our formal response is been this program. We do other things, as I said, webinars and podcasts and, events and so forth. But this is, the kind of defined educational offering. And so far, it seems to be resonating, so it seems to reflect that that this perceived need, is real, and that this type of approach, may have some relevance in addressing it. So, if anyone has any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions from anybody? Over here.
Great. How many hours do you think this requires?
That's a good question. I won't cheap out with it depends, but it does depend, because people are coming to it with different backgrounds. I would say on average, we also do ask them, one of the survey questions is how many hours, did you spend? 100, 125, 150, that's probably, yeah.
Maybe time for one more?
Is there any plan to create a short version for boards? Because I think there'd be a huge uptake if you had a 5-hour version instead of a 100-hour version for boards.
That's a very good question. And we do, we are always looking at whether there's not just a need for that, but whether or not we're appropriately positioned to deliver it. But I mean, I agree with you that, that there does seem to be that need. It's one of the things that, you know, it's in the group of things which we are considering. But I mean, right now, I mean, I wouldn't say that there's a specific plan for that.
I have one for you, Bill, and that is the ink is hardly dry on your book when, you know, things are changing so fast that the book is obsolete. How do you keep it up to date?
Coffee.
AI.
That's a very good question, and it is a challenge. And we are always reviewing our curriculum, and we try to keep our revisions and revamps to an annual basis, which nowadays with this topic, you know, may not be sufficient. But what we do is if anyone goes through it and they're successful, and we have membership in our organization, right, at a nominal fee. If someone's successful and they maintain their membership, they will continue to have access to this program. So if we come out with some new coverage of agentic AI, let's say, and maybe that wasn't in the curriculum when they did it, all they have to do is log back in and they can go over it. You know, it's available to them because we honestly do feel that, you know, we want to be there for these professionals throughout their career. And we know that all of this changes, their roles in organizations change. So, you know, so that's how it is a challenge keeping our curriculum up to date. But for the learner's perspective, as we evolve it, they will have access to it.